yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme which looks at news issues of the day through the papers and manuscripts of yesterday. Something a little bit different this week for various reasons, which I won't go into. Suffice to say, we're going to go back just over 200 years to 1722, to be exact. And the bishop has been very much back in the news in recent months. A new bishop, of course, Bish Trish, due to arrive on the Isle of Man later this year around October. But in 1722, the bishop was imprisoned. Yes, who'd have thought Bishop Wilson was imprisoned? Detailed beautifully in the wonderful illustrated Manx history, Here is the News, done by the late, great Terry Kringle, of course, here on Manx Radio, of the history man and everything else you can think of over the years that's been done on Manx Radio. Terry will have done it. But of Bishop Wilson's imprisonment, he writes, "The Lieutenant Governor today, the 29th of June, 1722, signed an order committing the Bishop of Sodra Bishop Wilson, to imprisonment in Castle Rushen after what has been the most dramatic conflict between church and state ever seen in the island. It is understood that Bishop Wilson is to make an immediate appeal to the King in Council. The situation has come about through a personal confrontation between Bishop Wilson and Governor Horn, and it is the climax of a long period of conflict between the diocese and the civil power in the island. The bishop is known for his strong belief that the church should regain many of its old powers, particularly by way of its ecclesiastical courts. But Governor Horn has consistently refused to allow troops to be used to arrest persons sentenced by the Vicars General and remove them to the bishop's prison in the crypt of St. German's Cathedral. Perhaps we could bring this back. It'd be a good idea, maybe. He also has denied the ecclesiastical courts the right to punish members of his castle households and garrisons, and he has allowed persons sentenced by these courts to appeal to a civil court. The matters reached a personal level a short time ago when the bishop sentenced the wife of Governor Horn to make public acknowledgement that she had slandered another lady. In reply, the governor ordered the sentence to be set aside, along with a series of other sentences passed this year in the ecclesiastical courts. The bishop and the vicars general refused to do this and were fined by the governor. Now we have today's order of imprisonment, made because they have refused to pay. What happens now depends on Bishop Wilson's appeal to the king. At 58, with 24 years in office behind him, he is renowned for his saintliness and his kindness and his belief in universal education. His downfall has only come about because of his resistance to the growing power of the state at the expense of the church, and his belief that people should be punished if they do not lead a more godly life. Legal experts believe the king will allow him to take his case to appeal, in which case he could be released from Castle Rushen in a matter of weeks to await a hearing. Who'd have thought? Imprisoning a bishop, and the bishop locking up people in their own dungeons. Yes, it's something we could maybe reintroduce. Who knows? Whilst we're at it, in 1722, smuggling going great guns. Custom officials hit out today against the rapid growth of smuggling in the Isle of Man, which is making it a centre of what is known as the running trade. In a report, they say it's been growing for nearly 30 years, with dutiable goods being shipped in from France, Spain, Portugal, Norway and Sweden. What came in from Sweden? Shark meat? I don't know. After the poultry Manx duties have been paid, the goods are then run secretly to quiet creeks and bays in other parts of the British Isles to avoid the duties payable there. The goods are mainly wine, spirits, tobacco and tea. The report says the Manxman's aptitude for seafaring is making him a daring and skillful practitioner of the smuggling trade. Probably still goes on today, but maybe not at the same level. Emigration that is, not immigration, was increasing in 1722. While immigration has been increasing, emigration from the island by Manxmen and women has been stepping up as well. Numbers of young people in particular have been taking advantage of readily available permissions to leave obtainable from the office of the Lord. This has effectively ended one of the causes of long-term and extreme unrest among Manx people and the growing opposition to the rule of the Darbies. It was always considered that their ban on people leaving the island on pain of imprisonment, yes, you just couldn't go, and the confiscation of personal property was a gross infringement of personal freedom. The first population census was 1722. Plans made for carrying out the island's first census. It follows the increasing immigration we've just heard about taking place since the controversial Manx restrictions on aliens were abolished 25 years ago by repeal of the 1422 Act of the Customary Laws. Officials believe that with people from outside the island, particularly Scotsmen and Irishmen, no longer having to petition the Lord of Man for special residential licences, many hundreds of new settlers have moved into the island. Immigration and emigration still something of a hot potato today, I would say. And finally, for 1722, the growth of Douglas, Terry comments on. Finally, there is growing dispute between Castletown and Douglas over which is the most important town in the island. Well, I think Douglas has won, certainly in recent years. Castletown is still the official residence of the Lord of Man and his governors, as well as the House of Keys. But Douglas has grown into a bigger settlement and, according to some observers, the richest in the island. I think that remains the case to this day. This is because of the fine haven for shipping in Douglas Bay. It also has the biggest market in the island, with increasing numbers of farmers sending produce to it. Castletown says the preeminence of Douglas is leading strangers to mistake it for the capital of the Isle of Man. They were ahead of their time. Mistake no more. Douglas now, as it has been for many a year, the capital, of course. You can argue the toss about which is more attractive, Douglas or Castletown. But it's amazing to see how issues such as immigration, emigration and population were news then and the news now. It's all old news, as we say. Until next week, cheerio.
You're gonna be yesterday's news.